Hey, Cookies here. This is the Dragonflight Season 1 Mythic Plus guide for Resto Shaman. Just to preface, YouTube videos do have a tendency to become outdated rather quickly, so use this as an overview, but be sure to take a look at up-to-date resources such as subcreation.net, which I'll have a link to down below in the description. It'll do a good job of keeping up to date on lots of information, as the players aren't 100% sure yet as to what trinkets to use, what specific talent builds people are going to be running in various key levels, that sort of thing. So this is a great resource. As you can see, it'll just keep track of what people are using in various key levels. It mostly tracks highest keys done, but that's still a great, starting point of understanding what trinkets are good, what patterns you can see, and things like that. So check this after watching the video. And other than that, we will go ahead and jump into our talents. So I'm not going to cover the entire talent tree because, as I just talked about, these things are going to change a lot, and especially with Resto Shaman, there's so many interchangeable talents for like small utility or small benefits in specific dungeons. So that's something that you either need to learn on your own, or there will be resources available where you can just go look at a specific dungeon and see what players are running. Subcreation allows you to do that specifically. And then just take those talent builds. What I'm going to do instead is just talk about the talents that are the most important and crucial to take in Mythic Plus. So these are talents that you are absolutely going to want to have all of the time. And as long as you have these talents, you can probably build anything around this. Again, these are even subject to change, so be mindful of that. But this is my understanding of what the absolute essential talents are for Mythic Plus. So first off, in the specialization tree, so the restoration side of the tree, the key talents are going to be Ascendance, Primordial Wave, Ancestral Vigor, and that's it for the spec tree. Next, moving on to the class tree, we have Ancestral Guidance and Earth Shield. That's really all that's completely mandatory from the class side of the tree. So the main reason that we take these is Ascendance and Ancestral Guidance give us huge throughput cooldowns that we can actually use to heal through intense moments during the dungeon. And then we have things like Primordial Wave, Earth Shield. These are going to give us the utility that we need and just the throughput that we need in between those cooldowns. So it's what allows us to keep healing the group and have a lot of healing throughput, even though we don't have something like Ascendance or Ancestral Ancestral Guidance active at the moment. Like I said, there's a lot of other things that are interchangeable. There's a lot of niche talents, like we have Poison Cleansing Totem, we have Hex, we have even Purge can be situational. You have all these totems and things like this that are situational and can be good in specific dungeons. So I'm not going to cover all of that. That'll be in another video where I deep dive on the talent tree itself and talk about all the various builds you can use. And if anything, I'll probably have something set up for like every single dungeon, just like a template for every dungeon, but we'll get to that when we get there. So keep an eye out for that video. Next up, we're going to go over our stats. So for Resto Shaman, the key stats that we're going to talk about, really, item level is the main thing that you want to chase after on Resto Shaman. After that, you can really go for any stat. They all have their own pros and cons, so I'll just go over them briefly. So starting off with haste, this just smooths out our gameplay, makes casting easier, makes us be able to cast more, and it's also our highest single target damage stat. So whenever we build lots of haste, it's going to increase how much single target damage we do. As a healing stat, it's pretty poor. Outside of smoothing our gameplay, we really don't want too much haste because then we won't be able to heal and provide that throughput that we need for those challenging boss encounters or pulls in specific dungeons, which is definitely going to be present in Dragonflight. So just get enough haste. I can't give a specific amount because it's going to be Season 1, but just get enough haste to where the gameplay feels smooth and it doesn't feel clunky, and then move on to other stats. Next up, we have crit, which is going to be our highest AoE damage stat. So we usually try to stack this if we want to do as much AoE damage as possible. And it's also a pretty solid healing stat. I would say it's a good healing stat. So it's a solid stat to chase after. Next up, we have versatility, which is going to be all around. It's going to be good at AoE. It's going to benefit our single target damage. It's going to benefit our healing good. Like, it just keeps everything even, but it also has the added bonus of giving us actual survivability. which is huge. So in higher keys, versatility will become the stat that you really want to build up on. And really, if it works in higher keys, it works in lower keys too. It's just you can min-max your damage a bit more in lower keys, so you can take things like crit and haste more often. But as a general rule, versatility will be your go-to stat once you have enough haste to smooth out your gameplay. And then next up, we have Mastery, which doesn't give us any damage bonus whatsoever. So a lot of the time, you'll probably see people neglecting this stat. But it is probably our best healing stat, or very close to it, along with crit. So if you're struggling with healing, consider getting more Mastery, especially in this new expansion where we have a lot of, like gear that needs to be upgraded. We're not all super geared out. We don't have a bunch of stats, and the dungeons might hit particularly harder than previous expansion. Like in Shadowlands, the dungeons were quite easy to run through in season 1 and 2. But in this expansion, there are more like healing checks and things that you actually have to pay attention to and heal. So Mastery might be something that actually gets picked up once again. So again, just to recap really fast, go for item level, don't worry about it too much, but if you really want to min-max your stats, then the benefits are haste for smoother gameplay and single target damage, crit for AoE damage and pretty good healing, versatility for all around and survivability, mastery for the best healing stat, but nothing else. All right, now we're going to talk about our healing rotation, very similar to our beginner's guide that I talked over the rotation for, but we're going to go over it a little bit more in depth. So first off, we have Riptide and Healing Stream Totem. These are like our upkeep spells, you could say. So we want to try to keep Riptide on cooldown as much as possible, just pressing that for our main healing spell, and then keeping Healing Stream Totem or Cloudburst down, depending on what we have talented. If we have Healing Stream Totem down, if we have Healing Stream Totem talented, we just drop it down whenever we feel like we need a tiny bit more healing, making sure that we at least keep it on cooldown because we have 2 charges, so you can just sit on the second charge. And then if you have Cloudburst, it's really the same way. You just press it when you need more healing, and you don't have to think about it outside of that. So if you have Cloudburst, just treat it like a Healing Stream Totem. Just drop it when you need more healing, and then you can kind of ignore it and just continue playing the game, and it'll do its own work for you. So after our upkeep spells, so we keep Riptide on cooldown, we keep Healing Stream or Cloudburst on cooldown. We then want to spend our Tidal Wave stacks because every time, this is a correction from the beginner's guide, every time we cast Riptide, we're going to get 2 stacks of Tidal Waves. And now Healing Wave, Healing Surge, and Chain Heal all spend these Tidal Wave stacks. Chain Heal used to generate a stack, but now it spends it. So what do we want to spend our Tidal Wave stacks on? 90% of the time in Mythic Plus, you're going to spend it on Healing Surge. This is just our biggest heal, fastest heal, and single target healing tends to be more important in Mythic Plus than something like AoE or group healing, because there's usually specific players that are in danger in certain situations compared to the entire group being in danger, like in a raid. So 90% of the time we use Healing Surge, but if we want to do the same thing as Healing Surge, we want to heal a single target, but we want to be a little bit more conservative with our mana. Maybe it's a long boss fight, or we're just running low on mana and we don't have time to drink. Then we use Healing Wave. Then lastly, we have Chain Heal, which will be really good for AoE or group healing. So if the entire group is taking damage and it's not enough to where one player is in particular danger, then we probably use Chain Heal to kind of pick up the group and heal through that AoE damage. And that's it for our healing rotation. Other than that, it's just using cooldowns, which we have 3 cooldowns. We have Healing Tide Totem, we have Ascendance, and we have Spirit Link Totem. And you could include Ancestral Guidance in there probably as well. I would honestly not treat Healing Tide Totem as much of a cooldown, but these are all 3-minute cooldowns, and Ancestral Guidance is 2 minutes. So really, when you drop Healing Tide, don't expect too much from it. It's not going to be a huge heal or anything like that. So really, you should just be rotating between Spirit Link, Ascendance, and Ancestral Guidance. And since you can rotate them, you only use like 1 per pull, and then those are basically 1 minute. You're using them every minute, essentially. You get to rotate one of them. And then Healing Tide, just think of it as something where it just provides a bit of extra healing to your group, but it's not going to solo carry an entire pull like Spirit Link or Ascendance would. So when you press Healing Tide, you're going to need to actually put more healing into your group as well. So just think of it as something that provides you a little bit of a crutch in that pull. Okay, and then we have our damage rotation. So our damage rotation is very simple. It is just apply Flame Shock to targets. So say we're in AoE, we just apply Flame Shock, and then it's going to come back off cooldown while this one is still well on its way to being active, so we can apply it again. And typically, I try to maintain Flame Shock on 3 targets at a time. That's usually what you're able to do, because by the time this 4th Flame Shock is coming off cooldown, this first one is falling off. So just bounce your Flame Shock between 3 targets. And then after you keep Flame Shock on cooldown, you're then going to be casting Lava Burst, and that's when you get these procs in the middle of your screen, and then also you can hard cast it. It should have 2 charges if you have Echo of the Elements talented. So Flame Shock on cooldown, then press Lava Burst and keep it on cooldown. Then lastly, we press either Lightning Bolt if we're in single target. So if I'm fighting a single target mob, we keep Lava Burst on cooldown. Then once I don't have Lava Burst anymore, we start pressing Lightning Bolt. And then in AoE, we do the same thing, and we just press Chain Lightning. And typically for Chain Lightning, if there's more than 3 targets, so if there's 4 or more targets, you just spam Chain Lightning. Like, you don't even press Lava Burst. But a lot of the time, there's going to be some kind of priority mob or something that has higher health than the rest. And Shaman particularly is really good at focusing down single targets because of the Lava Burst damage and the way Flame Shock interacts with Lava Burst. So I would keep pressing Lava Burst most of the time. Even though it lowers your overall damage, it's definitely worth it. So again, keep Flame Shock on cooldown, press Lava Burst on cooldown. And then if it's AoE, you press Chain Lightning. If it's single target, you press Lightning Bolt. And that's the damage rotation. There's really nothing else to it. All right, and then we're going to talk about some spell usage. So the first major question a lot of people ask is, what do I do with my Earth Shield? Just throw it on the tank. You don't need to think more about it. It doesn't need to go on specific players during specific moments or anything. You can if you really want to min-max it, but I've healed a bunch of high keys, and I've almost never taken it off the tank. So you can just throw it on the tank and then not worry about it. And then, like I mentioned before, with Cloudburst Totem, if you have that talented instead of Healing Tide Totem or Healing Stream Totem, then with Cloudburst, don't think too hard about what buttons you're pressing or how much you're filling it up with healing or when you reactivate it. You just set it down, let it do its thing, just keep playing the game, and then just let it do its healing passively. If there's like emergency healing that needs to be done, you can just press the button a second time after dropping it, and it'll pop it early so that you get that healing right away. But otherwise, don't worry about it. And then we have Primordial Wave. So the way that we use Primordial Wave, if we have this talented, is you want to put Riptides out on as many people as you can in your group, then press a Primordial Wave, and then you would press a Healing Wave. And it will heal everybody who has those Riptides on them. So it's a really good group heal for whenever there's group healing required, is when you can use Primordial Wave. Otherwise, if Primordial Wave is available and you don't find yourself needing to use it for healing very often or applying a new Riptide to somebody, you can also throw Primordial Wave on enemies and it'll give you an extra Flame Shock, so you can get some extra Lava Burst charges and stuff, Lava Surge charges. And then next up we have Nature Swiftness. So with Nature Swiftness, it makes our next heal instant cast and free. So you actually want to use this on Healing Wave because Healing Wave heals for a bit more than Healing Surge. Healing Surge is that efficient, fast cast that we're using a lot of the time, but Healing Wave is a slower cast, but it heals for just a bit more. So when using Nature Swiftness, since it makes both of them the same cast time, they're both instant, we would use it on Healing Wave since that's a slightly bigger heal. And then you can also use Nature Swiftness on Chain Heal if you're trying to do like AoE healing. So you could like pop Nature Swiftness and then use a Chain Heal instantly. Same concept. But basically when deciding between Healing Wave and Healing Surge, always use Nature Swiftness with Healing Wave because it's going to do more healing. And it's the same thing. And then lastly, with Nature Swiftness, just like with our Primordial Wave, we can use Nature Swiftness offensively if we don't feel like we need it for that instant healing and it's been available for a while, or we just want to keep it on cooldown. Whenever it's available, just press it, and you can press Chain Lightning, and it'll do an instant cast Chain Lightning, or Lightning Bolt if you're in single target. So that just helps you get a little bit of a edge on damage boost. So because we can take Stormkeeper, we can like press Stormkeeper, do 2 chain lightnings, press nature swiftness, do another chain lightning. And now we just got 3 chain lightnings all within the span of like, 3 seconds. So it's really nice. And I think that's pretty much it. I will cover things more in depth. Also keep an eye out as I do Healing Out Loud. It's a series that I run for all the healers where I run through dungeons, raids, all that kind of stuff. And I do like a live commentary with a specific topic in mind. So like this one right here that you can see, this was like a legendary in Shadowlands that I specifically talked about. And I ran an entire dungeon and just like the whole time I was just talking about how best to use this legendary, my thought process of running it, how it's beneficial, its pros, cons, all that kind of stuff. I just talk about a specific topic in depth and run an entire dungeon. So I plan to do a lot of those. So stay tuned. And other than that, thank you so much for watching. I hope this was helpful. I hope you're enjoying Dragonflight. I know I am. And I will see you guys all in the next one.